I'd say 2018 was a pretty good year for video games. I'm not generally one to give out awards or name any one thing the best, but I would like to speak about some of my favourite games that came out in 2018. And fair warning, I may cheat and briefly mention games I played in 2018, or maybe even still playing now, which didn't necessarily come out in the year, but I invite you to share your own favourite games of the year down in the comments. I think I can roughly divide this into two categories, however. My two games of the year are Red Dead Redemption 2 and Monster Hunter World. Red Dead gave me a story experience that I believe will stick with me for years to come, even more so than the first game did. I was a little shocked when I realised it was 8 years ago, thereabouts, since the first game, but I remember so many of the important story beats in that game. Not many movies, games, media in general, not many of them get much of an emotional response from me. But Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of the handful that did. It isn't just that though, the game was extremely ambitious and, in general, high quality, and I had a very fun time playing it. Not that it was perfect, of course, there are things to nitpick and complain about, and some larger problems too. As of time of writing, the online is not all that fantastic. But even if you cut the online out entirely, I think the single player alone is worth the asking price. If you haven't played Red Dead Redemption 2, and you have a platform that can run it, well, I implore you to get it. As a matter of fact, I insist. I don't often talk about games as art or anything like that, but Red Dead 2 was my experience of the year. And yes, I know it's technically Red Dead 3. Whereas Monster Hunter World was my gameplay game of the year. The story was a little stupid and underwhelming, but if we're talking about a game I played the most this year and had the most fun playing, it would be Monster Hunter World. It hit a lot of the right notes with me. In 2018, I put more than 300 hours into that game. And yes, it's a game with problems. The PC launch was very rocky. There is a slight lack of variety when it comes to long-term content if you compare to older Monster Hunter games. You know, seeing as they had to start most things over from scratch. There are some balance issues in the game, for sure. Some monsters are designed in a way that is straight up not fun, or has too many random elements that make it not fun. But I've enjoyed the hell out of it in 2018, and I keep going back to play it more than anything else this year. The free content updates are good. Every single meaningful piece of content since launch has been free, all the monsters. The only paid content were things like emotes and stickers, and I think that's a good way to go about it. But just for emphasis, just because these two are my games of the year, doesn't mean I am implying they are perfect, and I can only talk about games I played. I hear the new Spider-Man on PS4 was really good, I just haven't had the chance to play it yet, and you can see my initial reviews on Red Dead and Monster Hunter if you want more of my thoughts there. One caveat I have for Monster Hunter World, I would only really be able to give it a big recommendation if you have at least one friend to play it with. Ideally, 3 other people would be best. Hunting solo is fun, don't get me wrong, but it gets old kind of fast, and the gameplay is just so much more satisfying with friends. If only because you can see the custom messages. There were other great games that came out in 2018 as well. I have to give special mention to God of War on the PS4. I really enjoyed that game, which delivered a nice blend of insane graphics, an entertaining journey and story, and gameplay that was easy to get into, but had enough depth to make the combat interesting. And of course, it left us with a dramatic hook for a sequel. It didn't resonate with me to the same level as Red Dead, it didn't hit those same beats, but I enjoyed the hell out of it, and God of War seems to be winning a lot of Game of the Year awards from other outlets, shall we say. 2017 you might think was a hard year to beat. We had Horizon Zero Dawn, Breath of the Wild, Nioh, Nier Automata, For Honor, the Mario game, so on and so forth. And yet, whilst I enjoyed most of those listed, nothing about them really stood out to me. Breath of the Wild was a cool game, it was a really cool open world. Nioh and Nier were decent. I didn't play Mario Odyssey, and somebody got me to play the first few hours of Horizon Zero Dawn. I couldn't get into it. I'm not saying it was bad, it just wasn't my kind of game. It was a bit too generic. And you might be going, what? How was it generic? It had robot dinosaurs! It was generic to me in the sense that it was an open world game that did nothing new from my perspective. And the story just... the writing in it was predictable. I played a few hours of it, and I pretty much correctly guessed the entire plot of the entire game. But yeah, I'm not saying any of them are bad, because, you know, video games can be very subjective. What resonates with one player may not resonate with another. One of my friends found Nier Automata to be deeply emotional and engaging, whereas for me, I beat all the endings in Nier Automata and I was like, alright, that was okay, now I'm gonna play something else. And again, I've reviewed a bunch of those games mentioned, if you want to hear my full thoughts on them. 2017 had quantity, but 2018 had quality to me. Any other special mentions? Well, Shadow of the Colossus Remastered came out. I had a blast going through it. Warriors RG4, which is... well, it's a Dynasty Warriors game, but I enjoyed it a lot. It's one of my favourite Dynasty Warriors games. Especially compared to the atrocious Dynasty Warriors 9, which emotionally damaged me. We also had Dragon Ball FighterZ, the first fighting game I've bought in years, it feels like. We had A Way Out, a very unique and bizarre, ambitious co-op game. Octopath, Detroit, Spider-Man, Ass Odyssey, Hitman. Yeah, there's a lot of games I've yet to play that came out 2018 that I've heard good things about. There's also things like Fallout 76, but let's not talk about that. I've also been playing a lot of Xenoblade 2 recently. It's the first Xeno game I've played, and although it's the most cliched thing ever, I'm enjoying it as a kind of casual, classic-feeling JRPG. I'll review it once I've beat it, but my thoughts on it so far, it's making me feel like an early 2000s, late 90s kind of JRPG. There's loads of towns to visit, there's a very big world, the story is cliched, not really worth talking about, but it's fun, you know, it's funny. It's also pretty cringy with all the sort of anime stuff, but sometimes that's what you just need, you know? After you played Red Dead Redemption 2, where the game is so heavy and oppressive and depressing at times, even if it left me feeling kind of good overall, sometimes it's nice to go from something to that to just some stupid anime people screeching at each other, you know? But yes, Monster Hunter and Red Dead get my coveted Silver Montastic Game Award for this year. What about the future? Well, Devil May Cry 5, Resident Evil 2 Remake, Anthem. I'm looking forward to these games, and I know I'm looking forwards to Anthem. Is that surprising to you? It's surprising to me. I've not looked forwards to a BioWare game since Mass Effect 3, I think? Do you remember the ending for Mass Effect 2? And I know Mass Effect gets a lot of shit these days, but back then, the ending for Mass Effect 2 was so awesome, so hype-inducing. And then Mass Effect 3 was Mass Effect 3. And then BioWare just kind of had a bunch of games that sucked or were underwhelming. I'm cautiously optimistic for Anthem. Having played a little of it, I'm hoping it's not going to disappoint, but, well, we'll see. Mountain Blade. Maybe that's gonna come out 2019. I mean the new Mountain Blade. I don't remember what it's called. Bannerlord, maybe? And that's Mount and Blade, not Mountain Blade. I'm sorry if my accent makes that seem confusing. Risk of Rain 2! I almost forgot about that. The first Risk of Rain is not a game I've played all that much, because no one really ever wants to play it, but I really enjoy Risk of Rain, and Risk of Rain 2 is 3D, and I'm really looking forwards to that. I'm hoping I can get some of my friends into it, because I'm very optimistic for that one. I'm also hoping we get more Monster Hunter World content. I mean, we are getting more Monster Hunter World content. We're getting Iceborne. And you might be thinking, what about Smash Bros. Ultimate? Because I've like not spoken about that at all, and surely that's one of the bigger games of 2018. Well, it came out right at the end of the year, and I've not really played it all that much to form a proper opinion as of time of writing. But, you know, I'm enjoying it, sure. I don't know if I'm gonna keep playing it hundreds of hours like I did Melee, but I love playing Ganondorf in it. What about Souls-style games? Well, we have Sekiro. We have Shadows Die Twice! And I imagine From are working on some other projects. Bloodborne 2? Dark Souls 4? Demon Souls 2? Dragon Souls? Who knows? Bloodborne 2? I mean, that VR game, Deracine? That had some, like, Easter eggs for Bloodborne 2, so people are thinking maybe that's coming out. Nioh 2 is coming out at some point, which I'm hoping builds on all the strengths of the first game and polishes out the weaker aspects, because Nioh was a game I really enjoyed, but also found very frustrating in certain areas. But now, you tell me your games of the year.
Done.
Yes, specifically
That's
you.
surprising.
You think I'm not listening? You thought wrong. You think I'm just asking you to comment, even though I'm not going to read the comments? Rongo bongo again, boyo. I read every comment. Every single one. I see.